Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Context. We have an exciting and interesting topic today. So hopefully we'll be touching on a lot of interesting security concepts around running MCPs and how to isolate them. But before we do all that, Darren, hope you had a lovely long weekend and
Yeah,
starting
fun.
to feel the brutal sort of heat of Phoenix
Yeah,
emerging.
yeah.
Is
It's
it
it's actually not been that hot here, so it's only been in like the upper 90s. So
I don't really love that. I like it when Phoenix is uncomfortable. It makes me feel better about living in a place that is cold at times. So it's nice to think, oh, well, yeah, but you'll be miserable soon. So I'll just look forward to that. I'll look forward to the degree of July and August that you'll be dealing with.
oh,
All right. Well, bunch of stuff going on at the AAIF. Again, I'm Shannon Williams. I'm one of the co-founders of Obot. Darren Shepard, my co-founder. We've been hosting this now for a year. Darren, I don't know if you knew that, but this is
I did
like
not
our
know.
1 year
Yeah.
anniversary of hosting the context.
Wow.
For those of you who are distributed around the world and were just wondering how you could meet other people and talk to other people who are as excited and interested in agentic integration as you were, great news. There are 10 events coming up before the end of this year being hosted by the AAIF, and they are literally on every continent, I think, other than Australia and South America. So multiple events in Asia. Our next 5 events are all in Asia. So we're going to be in Bangalore and Mumbai and Seoul and Shanghai and Tokyo coming up over the next few months. And then before we have the big Dev Summit in Amsterdam, which is a kind of the second European version of the Dev Summit. That will be September 17th and 18th. And then we'll be back in North America for the Toronto and San Jose events. A couple headlines. We're actually getting close to the close dates for some talks. So I don't have the list in front of me, but I know that I saw the other day Amsterdam's call for papers ends in June, like June 5th or 6th. So definitely want to speak at any of these. It is an awesome time to share your story, talk about how your organization is implementing MCPs, skills, agents, and kind of adopting agentic development. So lots of great talks, lots of great things coming up. Bangalore and Mumbai are just a couple weeks away, so we've got the next round of events coming up very soon. On the context side, we've been busy. Lots of really great talks recently. If you haven't been paying attention, you should definitely follow the YouTube channel. The Agentic AI Foundation YouTube channel was the old context channel. It's all kind of merged together now. And there's loads of content going up there basically every time we host another event and every time we host the context. So jump in, take a look, and if you see something you like, follow. Make sure you if you're interested in talking or speaking or getting involved, please just follow and send us a comment or reach out. I'm just Shannon at obot.ai. We'd love more speakers. So if you've got something you'd like to share, come on board. With that, I am super excited to introduce our speaker for today. Chris McHenry is joining us. He is the Chief Product Officer over at Aviatrix. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with Darren and I today.
Yeah, my pleasure, and I'm super excited about being a part of this. I have, there was an episode of a really great podcast that I listen to sometimes called SaaStr about a year and a half ago, and they were saying if your team doesn't wake up every single morning and feel like they're kids in a candy store because of all the cool AI stuff that's going on, then you might not have the right team. And I subscribe to that fully. So like I'm deep in this world, and I also lead our AI initiatives internally at Aviatrix and our AI ambassador program, and we're wrestling with a lot of this stuff beyond just how do you incorporate AI in the product. So this is a really fun one for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've been excited to have Chris on for a while now. Chris and I met maybe 3-4 months ago when he reached out and we talked, said, hey, I've been playing around with the open source version of Obot, and we think there's some really cool stuff we can do to control network security on MCP servers. And it just got us all excited because Darren and I both have spent a lot of time in Kubernetes land and in infrastructure world. And, one of the big challenges we've seen with MCP servers is how to sort of control them, especially as they are running for users often now, behind a gateway in the organization's infrastructure. Their risk profile is interesting. So, Chris, maybe you can kick off your talk and talk to us a little bit about Aviatrix and what you guys do.
Yeah.
But we're super happy to have you here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start. I'll give kind of a brief overview of Aviatrix because I suspect people are, on the call may or may not be familiar with us. But we're not new. We've been around for about 10 years. I would say the last 3 or 4 years we really found our footing. Our original space was really how do you solve a lot of the low-level networking and network security challenges for enterprises in the cloud. Honestly, not that dissimilar than the recent transitions we've seen moving towards agentic AI as a big disruptor in what enterprise infrastructure looks like. Cloud is very similar. And, we've one of the, even other parts of that transition is how workloads in general change shape. So moving from traditional virtualized workloads to Kubernetes workloads to serverless workloads, which also happen to be in many cases where a lot of these agentic workloads are moving. That's really been our focus. And over the last 5 years, really, we've built out a product that we call the Cloud Native Security Fabric. Now, I know a lot of the people on this call are platform, owners, architects, administrators, things along those lines. So I'll dive in pretty deep in terms of what we really are. But again, the high level concept is we really care about making sure that you can secure the communications between workloads and other workloads and between workloads and the internet. We see that as being an absolutely critical part of an organization's cybersecurity posture, and it's shockingly hard to do as workloads get more modernized and as they get more diverse. We've got a lot of really interesting things that have popped up over the last several years. I would say service meshes being one of them. And what you'll see about our cloud native security fabric is that it is kind of similar to a service mesh, kind of similar to a firewall, kind of similar to some of the inspired by the SDNs that were popular in hybrid cloud and on-prem. But again, really, really tightly tuned for cloud native workloads. And that's put us in a really interesting position to be able to be a critical part of the secure AI stack as well. So very high level, we have really good traction in the industry. We've got about $100 million in revenue. One of the stats I love to throw out is that about 40% of the insurance transactions in the United States flow through our software across a variety of organizations. We tend to do well with highly regulated orgs because those are the ones who care more about their security posture. But agentic AI really brings this into a new light in a couple different ways. And I think we have an opportunity to, rather than retrofitting a lot of the applications, to build it right up front. And I know that's a lot of what we care about here in this call is how do we build that platform. Our platform, when you take a slight dive deeper, heavily optimized for the cloud is really where we're focused. And like I said, we take a lot of inspiration from other architectures, but some of the core differentiators for us is that we operate kind of similar to a service mesh, but at a little bit lower of a layer and much more deeply integrated, not with just the Kubernetes platform, but with the cloud platforms as a whole, so that you can visualize and govern communications across a variety of workloads. And most importantly, like one of the biggest things we focus on is how do you do this in a way that's totally transparent to the application. Shift left, policy as code, all of these things are a really important part of our framework. And this will become interesting when we talk about why this is relevant for MCPs specifically. So I want to take a step back because when I reached out to Shannon, it was actually right after I think a lot of great ideas ultimately come from personal experience. And we were on our MCP journey last year. And I was, honestly, MCPs for us internally were the unlock to really accelerate meaningful AI use. And one of the first ones that I had been pioneering with my team was something that we called Ask the Code. And it was designed, we didn't want to give everybody in the organization Cursor or Claude Code. We didn't want to give everybody direct access to our source code, but there was a lot of need. Like, I wanted to be able to generate documentation. We wanted to be able to accelerate support cases. We wanted to be able to answer questions quickly when, a seller comes in and says, is this supported or not? Or tell me how this thing works, or fill out the RFPs more effectively. And if I can just go to the root and ask the code what it does, you can get a lot of really interesting value out of that. So we launched a new revision of our internal AI platform, and we ultimately ended up standardizing on Claude. At the time, we were using kind of a open web UI derivative, and the first couple MCPs that we put on there were the ability to search our internal Confluence and Jira, and then this Ask the Code MCP. Now, exactly what I expected was happening. Our support teams were using it. And I get a notification from our InfoSec team saying, hey, oh my gosh, our MDR provider just discovered that our roadmap was published on the internet. It's like, oh my gosh, how has this happened? And we were fortunately logging all of the chats going through the platform. And I remember reading the transcript of the chat and thinking, holy crap. We need to do something about how we contain MCP servers specifically, because what had happened was a support engineer was using the product exactly as they were designed, right? They were going to the chatbot and they had a customer who was asking them for a roadmap. So they're pushing this chat sessions like, hey, I want to get the roadmap. Goes out, queries our Jira, pulls down an excellent summary of the roadmap. He says, no, I want it in PowerPoint, right? And it starts to generate the PowerPoint. And it's like, oh, I can't generate PowerPoint, but I can give you the outline and you can copy and paste. And it's like, no, be more creative. And it's like, oh, wait, let me think. Oh my gosh, I have this tool called execute shell command. Let me see what I can do with that, right? And why did that tool exist? It existed because our Ask the Code MCP wanted to be able to do Git commands, right? It wanted to do like Git diffs and, look at different commits and pull different branches and do all this other kind of stuff, but it wasn't effectively guarded. And so it's like, oh wait, no, I can build a PowerPoint presentation. Let me download Python. Let me download this PPTX package and let me generate the PowerPoint presentation. Then it comes back and it says, here's your PowerPoint. And it gives like a /temp link to it. It's like the support engineer's like, no, I can't access that. How can I get access to it? And it's like, well, I don't have the ability to download because we're going through Open Web UI. And then it's like, wait, no, I could upload it to the internet. And so then it starts going and it's like, here's 4 different temp file locations, shareware sites that I've uploaded this PowerPoint presentation to. Here's your link. I'm very glad that I was able to help you. It was just being a helpful assistant, right? But it was, and when we looked to tune the MCP even, it was very difficult to actually remove the tool itself without losing functionality in that MCP, because it was doing exactly what it was designed to do in terms of giving it flexibility in terms of navigating the code base. And we were like, oh my gosh, well, you know what? If I think about this like a user, how would I secure a user? Well, I would either say this MCP is really dangerous because it had, thank God, our code didn't get exfiltrated, right? But this MCP is really dangerous. It has really sensitive data. Just this one, I don't want it to connect to the internet. Or maybe we're even a little bit more, flexible about it. And I say, hey, I just want to block shareware sites, right? Like we want to block common data exfiltration patterns. And that's really where the rabbit hole began, because now it's like, okay, well, how do I identify an individual MCP? And what would it look like for us to be able to scale this internally within an MCP platform? And that's where we came to Obot. And actually, it was really powerful because in the first couple of days, as we were playing around with it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is open source. We can build our own integration, because our specialty is in governing communication. We have a long and very deep integration with Kubernetes. Like I have the ability to dynamically apply policy to a namespace or based on a set of labels. I can do deep internet security. I can do a bunch of different things. I was like, man, if we tie these 2 things together, this will be really, really powerful. And so just for proof, this is the deck, opening slide. I'm not going to give you the details of it. It is last year's roadmap. But this is the opening slide that I found that next day on a shareware site. And I reached out to the support engineer. I could have not have been happier about this. I'm sure he was really freaked out, but I could not have been happier because I also remember reading the transcript and thinking, man, prompt engineering or prompt injection detection is not going to solve this. There was nothing malicious, no malicious intent. It was just being resourceful, and it was using the tools that it had. So again, I mentioned we're in a really interesting position here based on our technology to be able to solve this problem. Over the last year, we really focused heavily on solving deep integration with Kubernetes. And sorry, some of the slides aren't rendering perfect, but we've done deep integrations with AKS, EKS, GKE. Our CTO used to run GKE and the Istio open source project and the Kubernetes open source project when he was at Google. So we have a lot of expertise in this area, and we do some really, really cool stuff for perimeter security. You can think about our Kubernetes integration as like a off-box egress controller for, but egress from the cluster can be east-west, and that put us in a really interesting position to be able to do an integration here. We also have been investing over the last year deeply in policy as code. And so our system is designed to be really friendly for security teams. You got the traditional GUI and the visibility and all that kind of stuff. But you also have the ability to write policy as a YAML file that I can apply through a Helm chart and push that to a Kubernetes cluster. And our controller will read those YAML files, and it'll also look at all the inventory and figure out where all the pods are. And it has the ability from there to program policy. And we do this without any need for a true service mesh. You don't have to run Istio or Linkerd or any of that kind of stuff. We do this without any need, or Cilium. You don't need to change the CNI. You can use the native cloud CNI because our methodology is to do it outside of the cluster. And so this is all really the setup for what we did with Obot. So over the last couple of months, we've been working with the Obot team to build a new paradigm into the Obot open source project, which allows us to, as we deploy MCP servers, define the things that they're allowed to do on the network. And we took an initial very basic position on this, which is not necessarily, can I access, these databases or IP addresses or accounts, or it's not IAM based, right? There's that identity layer that OAuth and Obot already do incredibly well. We're really talking more about the network layer, and especially post tool call, right? So what does the tool actually do downstream once you call it? And that's where the network containment comes into play. And so in the initial release, it's primarily focused on, allowing specific URLs and FQDNs and things that you want it to be able to access on the internet. And importantly, doing that in a way that's standardized, not Aviatrix specific. We wanted to work on an open source standard with Obot. So that framework is integrated into Obot. And then we've also worked with Obot on a translation layer, which takes that provisioned MCP server along with its network policies and then translates that into something that Aviatrix can enforce. So if I go back to that breach example, we see the MCP server. It has a tool call with the intent is kind of drifted. Now, when it's egressing out of the Obot environment, it hits the Aviatrix gateway, it gets its traffic inspected, and then we can allow traffic to something like PyPy to download the package and generate the PowerPoint, but you're not going to be able to upload it to a shareware site. So diving a little bit deeper, again, one thing that was really important about this was to be able to integrate it into the MCP deployment workflow. I don't want anybody to have a split brain here. I don't want you to have to think about, unifying policy across both sides. We wanted to make this really, really seamless. So now when you deploy an MCP server in Obot, you have a new option there where you can define egress domains. And when that happens, as Obot deploys, it's also going to create a CRD inside of the Kubernetes cluster. We have a reconciler that translates that standardized CRD into the Aviatrix terminology, and then our system picks that up and then ultimately programs the appropriate enforcement points. And we've built this in a way that's designed to be able to scale, across regions, across environments. So you can have a single Aviatrix control plane that's monitoring 10 different Kubernetes environments, all with different, globally reachable MCP platforms. But you don't have to have an individual environment on each of them. So this is all part, oh shoot, I should have uploaded in PDF, my apologies. This is all part of what we call our validated containment architecture program. And if you're interested in learning more, here's a quick resource guide. We've got white papers. We have Terraform actually to spin up an entire lab. So if you want a quick start for Obot and Aviatrix, we have a program that we call Blueprints. So those blueprints live in our GitHub org under the Aviatrix Blueprints repo. We've got a bunch of them. We got different ones for Kubernetes too. So all three of the main cloud clusters, but we also have a specialized one for Obot and this validated containment architecture that will deploy Obot. It'll automatically connect everything up through Aviatrix, and it'll get you right to that point where you're ready to deploy your first MCP server and start playing around with controlling network policy out of it. So, we wanted to contribute to the open source community as a part of this. We wanted to make it an open standard. We're hopeful that other people will start to pick it up. But if this is an important part of how your team is building out those secure paved roads, then I think that this is a really good place to start. And the last thing I'll say, I won't throw this slide up, but we don't have an open source offering as a company, but we have set up several promotional packages to allow people to use this really indefinitely. We give away our first 5 environments for free attached to our SaaS platform. And we want people to be able to use this and to be able to build their foundations correctly. So procurable on the marketplaces, AWS, Azure Marketplace. We'll be adding some direct procurement on our website pretty soon too. But we want to make it easy to get started without a financial burden, even though we aren't open source.
Very cool, Chris. Yeah, so excited to see this thing come together, because it was awesome when you guys reached out, and we were, again, as an open source project, we get a reasonable amount of people doing interesting things with the open source. But this was actually far and away one of the more interesting steps, because it were 2 things that I was super excited when I saw it. I mean, one, it addressed kind of right in the core of the problem of malicious MCPs. I mean, forget the use case you described. There, one of the challenges we're running into is real MCPs that are, that have malicious code baked into them, that are exfiltrating information and look like they're from an authorized source. And, I think there's been plenty of examples of that at this point.
It's a huge supply chain. It's like a whole nother supply chain vector.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I think in some cases, these are even, there's even been examples of non-malicious MCPs that were from the actual vendors, but had supply chain, software supply chain issues that have caused vulnerabilities. And so almost universally, the issue is they then get too much privilege. They can go do too many things. They can reach out to too many places. And simply applying a policy at the network level to dictate the exact egress controls for an MCP server eliminates like 90+%, I think, of the potential risk here. So I was super excited. And then I love that. I mean, as a person trying to get as many engineering results out in the world, like you guys actually showed us how to deliver it. You contributed it. And then it wasn't even Aviatrix specific. It was, here's a framework that, being open like Obot is, we wanted to make sure other network vendors could pick it up and could integrate with it, which is exactly how you implemented it. So it was kind of like the thing that never happened. It was like a contribution that was actually a contribution, and it was not only self-serving. It was kind of like, oh my gosh, it actually exists. We've seen one for the first time here, and I didn't know this could happen. It was worthy of like excitement, and so far, I mean, it's been becoming, I think, quite important to a lot of companies we've been talking with as they're starting to. I mean, things have changed so rapidly. It's funny, this time, even when you first reach out, you think about December. I think when we first started talking, maybe it was November, December.
Yeah.
MCP was kind of going in a lull. Like we were in the MCP disillusionment phase. People were talking about MCPs not being particularly useful, and there being better ways, too talky. I mean, all that's changed dramatically in the last couple of months, as now MCP is just exploded in almost every company as they're actually trying to turn Codex and Claude and Cursor and Copilot.
Couple months, but it's like it's almost just like even like the last month or so. Like things have changed a lot recently.
again, right? It's like, and it's like, oh no, the MCP is dead. MCP is the only way to solve 90% of your problems of how to make this stuff work together. So we're in such an interesting moment. And as I'm sure everyone in the MCP ecosystem is feeling this right now, but there are just an enormous number of projects of organizations that are trying to standardize how to manage this stuff. And
I think that
CISOs are actually looking at it. It's like CISOs are coming and calling and talking about this problem. So it's an exciting time.
It is.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just gonna say, I think what you're seeing is the enterprise lag, right? Like it's the, what's the difference between the bleeding edge and the 10 YC companies that are housed in downtown San Francisco, and then how has this started to evolve into very practical enterprise adoption? I actually put a lot of it on Opus 4.6 and 4.5, right? When those models came out, in kind of combining with the timing of enterprises starting to build out their platforms, that's where we really started to see, and even in our own organization, the non-technical users starting to get real value out of the AI platforms. And so I think it's so funny how sometimes Silicon Valley feels like they're 10 steps ahead, but the real thing that brings something to fruition is when the enterprises start adopting it and embedding it into their platforms.
And we've been through this cycle enough times that we should all sort of not lose our shit when it takes a little while, because it always takes a little while, and we always lose our shit during the period. We're like, well, I thought this was going to be huge. I remember this for Kubernetes, where it was like, oh, Kubernetes everywhere. It's like, I don't know anybody using Kubernetes. It's too complicated. It's too hard.
No, but it's interesting with enterprise, because like with AI, this hype cycle is like so ridiculously fast.
Oh, it's crazy.
Right? So everyone's just like, things are so moving so fast, but it's kind of like enterprise didn't really get the memo. Yeah. So it's like everything, like it seemed like enterprise and stuff would move just a little bit quicker to pick it up a little bit earlier, but it's like, oh no, they're still doing what enterprise does. but I do think the first round of AI, because I feel like we're kind of on like this second generation of agents, is the first round was really, roll it yourself with Python, and it's mostly about RAG, data lookup, and just talking directly to a model. So like there wasn't big services integration, for good reason. We just didn't know how to do it. But like now it's like, oh yeah, we know how to do it now. So now it's becoming a real problem with like, okay, the solutions are out there, but like, it's scary. Like I thought it was like one thing that was really interesting from a security perspective, it's just dawned on me the other day, I don't know, is that with AI, this is the first time we've really had to get super serious about egress. Like within like Kubernetes and security, we've always looked at ingress, and like it's like, oh yeah, you can do egress also, but you basically just turn it off. You're like, it's not worth it. It's a pain in the butt, right? It like nobody ever does egress policies. But now it's like, oh no, egress is the number one thing. So we're actually not super well positioned, because it's like, oh well, what's different? It's just internet, and you're doing Kubernetes Istio stuff, It's like, no, it's like, it's really quite different of like, we haven't really paid a lot of attention to egress, of like what that really means. But then also it's this kind of deep layer. It's not like it doesn't matter that like, I need to just look at like, the IPs or DNS, right? It's like, oh, it's talking to GitHub, and it's like, no, but GitHub could be really bad.
Yeah, which repo, which organization? Yeah. Like, by the way, there's a lot of malware on GitHub. It's a great command and control channel. I can exfiltrate a lot of data through GitHub. Like, you got to get a layer deeper than that. Honestly. So
that's what I'm saying. That the security story around agents is so different in that it's like, because people are like, oh well, I have I can just give an agent a credential. And I'm like, well, it's not even so much like, because you're like, oh, I want to give an agent a credential, and it's allowed to do this behavior, but I don't want it to use that privilege in an unintended way. Because like normally you'd say like, oh, you're allowed, I'm going to give a write credential to this service I've written, but that service only does X, Y, and Z. So there's this implicit thing of the code, what it's going to do, and you give it a write credential. And now it's like, well, I'm going to give it a write credential, but I also don't really know what it's going to do with that. So I have to go like this one layer deeper of like understanding how that credential is being used. Yeah. And so it's like the security posture is like it's just like one layer deep. It's quite different now.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think it's like I'm typically one of those people where I'm like, it will be fine. But like you look at what's going on with AI, and it's like, no, you should be scared.
Oh,
Like
you have no idea. I mean, like I love that story because it's personal and it's totally legit. And I love showing the PowerPoint that was actually exfiltrated to catbox.me. But like that was, I have 10 other stories like this, right? I have stories of people who I know a company that had their Stripe keys accidentally exfiltrated to GitHub. Like literally, and this is a big company, right? They could have had a lot of money rerouted if they hadn't caught this in time, right? And it's using. I compare it to like we're trying to manage teenagers who we just gave them cars, and I've had a Tesla for a really long time. I don't really want to give my kid the Tesla. Like it'll probably be 12 years old, like when 15 years old by the time he's 16. So I'll probably get it, but I'm going to limit that thing to like 45 miles an hour with its little guardrail because there's no way that I'm going to let him go crazy. We're going to geofence it, right? So I mean, it's
I've never thought about this. These are good reasons to have a Tesla now. Control what my kid does.
Yeah, right. But no, it's I think it is. One thing that is actually really interesting is you're right on the egress piece, but the way that I frame it is this is the first time that we've had workloads, apps, right, that behave a little bit more like humans, and they're a little less predictable. And what's good about that is we actually do know how to protect humans. Like you don't really worry about human ingress controls. Like what do? You send them through Zscaler and you say you're not allowed to go to gambling websites or you're not allowed to connect back to command and control. And I actually think it's a little underappreciated in cloud. Even in Kubernetes, we've seen several recent attacks where for supply chain, like let's say like the Light LLM breach was an excellent example, right? So Light LLM gets popped. They embed a bunch of call home, content in it, or like malicious call home. Most people were running Light LLM in Kubernetes, right? I mean, it wasn't. And dude, that thing's serious. It's got all of your API credentials for all of your inference backends. It might have been hosting some MCP servers for you with other credentials in it too. And that whole thing just got like rooted effectively. And now what does it do? It sends that data back to a known malicious hosting provider in the Netherlands. That was on everybody's block lists, but most people didn't have egress control. It's like super basic stuff, right? Yeah. And so I am pretty passionate about that as like a missed opportunity, but you're exactly right. Like I think the big transition moment, some has been the supply chain stuff. That's a really common vector. But then the non-determinism of AI agents and the fact that we're giving them tools that now live inside of pretty sensitive environments with pretty sensitive data and have kind of unfettered access like that. It's a challenging recipe. So I'm not here to be a fearmonger. Maybe my marketing team does this, but I really am here to exactly. I'm here to figure out like how do we build the platform in a way that actually empowers the AI teams, because I'm a big believer in AI and how we use that to operationalize. We need the paved roads that allow us to move quickly and safely at the same time.
And the thing with AI is like, I mean, it's with any of these like big technological movements or whatever, like cloud was kind of similar in the beginning. It's like, you can't just basically say, no, don't do it.
No, you can't.
It's like, so it's like, you have to like, it's going to happen. But the human aspect that you point out, I think is really interesting is like, one is I find almost always the solutions to AI problems is like, just look at how humans do it. Like understand human behavior. And that's a better solution of how to control and manage AI. But the other thing about that is like, is AI is so useful as like a tool to humans. And we have this kind of desire or where we're like, basically it's operating on our behalf, that it opens up this attack vector that like, we all know that like social engineering is the most effective way to, so it's like, well, now we can kind of like automate social engineering. And then, so it's not so much about like, oh, let me hack your public service. It's like, let me hack one of your employees to get access to what they have access. And that's what all these things
are. One of your
doing.
teenage interns.
Yeah. So it's like, so it's really, it's like, it's quite fascinating. It's like, if the stakes weren't so high, it would be really exciting. I'm like, wow, I'm excited about all this. Like, I love all this security stuff. I'm like, oh, I always wish I could have been a hacker, but I'm like too moral or something, where it's like, I feel bad if I steal things or break the law, but it's like, it's so much fun.
Guys, I want to be a little mindful of the time. We're half an hour. Chris, this was really cool, and appreciate you coming on, sharing your journey and everything you guys do. I know you guys actually have an MCP for Aviatrix, and you sort of doing a lot of adoption there as well. But anything you want to leave us with? Final comments before we wrap up?
My biggest piece, I think this is hopefully an empowering statement for everybody here on this call, is if we build the platforms well up front, then we can actually be the champions in the organization, because we're the ones that allow the teams to say yes securely, and get ahead of it. Because you're exactly right, Darren. The issue that we're running into right now is the CEO came and said, I will have an iPhone. I don't care if you're ready for it or not. Or I will go to cloud. I don't care if you're ready for it or not. They're saying the exact same thing with AI. And so the expectation is that it's going to happen. And we need to figure out, how do we balance speed and security to do it safely?
Yeah, well said. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Darren, thanks as always. And we'll see you guys again soon. Have a great day.